Welcome to this week's edition of the Reigns on the Cardinals podcast. Rob Reigns, Mike Reigns here, STLSportsPage.com, coming to you before the Cardinals home opener at Busch Stadium, an unofficial holiday in St. Louis. And Mike, I know it's always a fun time. Weather forecast is not the best, but we'll be playing baseball at Busch on Thursday, and that's what it's all about.
It's a national holiday in St. Louis. Opening day is truly like no other here.
I do think it suffers a little bit when you've had a week of games on the road before you come home, but that's just the way the schedule fell this year, so there's nothing really we could do about it. And I think all in all, too, if you look at it, it has to be considered a pretty good week for the Cardinals as they go 3-4 in that series in Los Angeles and San Diego. Of course, disappointing that they lose the finale in San Diego on Wednesday when they had a chance to sweep the series.
Yeah, I think it was Chip that said it the other day. Does it feel like they've been gone a month or haven't been in St. Louis forever? And certainly has been. But when you look back on the road trip, you're certainly excited the way that it went. There's probably two games that you look back at and think that you probably should have won, today being one of them, and certainly the one against the Dodgers where you had a lead and blew it a little bit later. So, there are some, questionable things that you look at early, but as we stated, this schedule does not do them any favors. And so jumping out to a, 3-4 record to start with is not bad.
We'll mention all of our title sponsors here for sponsoring this free podcast, just like all the free content here on STLSportsPage.com, Archwell Health, Rawlings Experience, as well as AAA Travel and Drury Hotels. We appreciate all of their support. Encourage you to check out their links on our website anytime you need any of those companies and their great services. We'll be hearing a lot more about Rawlings Experience coming up, a grand opening of their new event space and museum and gift shop up at Westport Plaza coming up very soon. So be looking for more details about that. And hopefully you also got a chance to check out our other new podcast with Dr. Adam Fitzgerald from Archwell Health that's up on the site. So with Archwell Health Matters. But back to the Cardinals, I think, Mike, you mentioned a little bit. So a lot of things to be excited about, I think, encouraged about with the first week of the season. But you kind of break it down for us. What did you like? What are your concerns?
I think the things that you look at that you're excited about are, certainly first off the play of Wilson Contreras. I think he's certainly done what you hoped he would do last year, and you hope that he does all of this year, right? You want him to just stay calm and relaxed and be a nice presence at the plate. You've got guys on this team that are going to be a lot more energetic. You look at Lance Lynn coming off the mound fired up, and you look at Gibson at his outing, and it's certainly a highlight to be excited about too, right? Between Lynn's start, Gibson, and Contreras, I mean, those are the highlights of the week. I think they've all done well, right?
And I thought Steven Matz had a good start too. In that Sunday night game in Los Angeles, the only, Zach Thompson scuffled a little bit in his two starts. Miles Michaelis was much better in his second start than he was on opening day. So I think that by and large, the rotation kind of did what you expected him to do, and you're kind of biding time again until Sonny Gray gets back. He did pitch his simulated game in Springfield against the AA Cardinals as they're getting ready for their season on Wednesday. His schedule started in Cardinals had moved his scheduled start for Memphis and Indianapolis because of a forecast of rain, and it turns out it was a good move they did because the Memphis Redbirds were rained out at Indianapolis on Wednesday night. So, I think the other thing about the pitching staff is I was real encouraged by the bullpen, especially in the games in San Diego. They worked a combined 8 scoreless innings in those 3 games and gave you, I think the performances that you hope to see.
I think the bullpen was great, right? I mean, I'm sure, like everyone, there were a few questions of why is this guy coming in, or is Ryan Fernandez still on this team? But I think there were some, overall, when you look at the body of work that they did, you were certainly excited about the way the bullpen did.
I was thinking that we might have to send out a missing persons report on Ryan Fernandez to find out if he was still out there somewhere in the bullpen, because it seemed like, especially I know he's waiting to make his major league debut, and it just seemed like there were a couple of opportunities earlier in the week where it was not as maybe a high pressure situation where he could have got him in there, but he finally got to pitch in the 8th inning on Wednesday, trailing 3-2, and he did his job. He led a double, got him a little bit with a hit of the double, but he strikes out the 3 batters to get out of the inning. So it was I think a good solid performance. I think he's earned his shot. The one discouraging note I think about the bullpen since we had our last conversation was the fact that another reliever, Riley O'Brien, who was a guy that we were all excited about, I think he had to go on the injured list because of a forearm strain, and now he's getting rest, and we'll know more about that, of course, when the team gets back home, what the prognosis for his recovery is. But that with Middleton out as well, that's a couple of guys that you had counted on being in that bullpen who are not going to be there for a while.
Yeah, and I was going to say, with the addition of John King, putting him in the game that he did, I probably thought would have been the situation for Ryan Fernandez at the time. instead of having John King have just traveled that day, try to get there and then come in a high leverage situation. I understand it's, Ryan Fernandez's major league debut, but I question that move a little bit in a game that potentially could have been won there, right?
And I just think too. I mean, if you had enough confidence in him out of spring training, and I know you can say spring training stats are what they are, but if he made your ball club out of spring training, then you thought he was one of the 8 best relief pitchers that you had in that camp. And if you don't have confidence in him to pitch in a big league game in that first week, then he probably shouldn't be on the roster. I mean, that's just, and I would say that whether it's about anybody that, about position player, a hitter, a pitcher, whatever. I mean, if you put him on your roster, you have to be comfortable to use him in situations. It just doesn't seem like that they had any interest in pitching him, especially any of those games in Los Angeles.
It does seem like at times there are a few bullpen guys that kind of go missing out there, right? There was a large chunk of the season last year that Zach Thompson was on this team, but they didn't pitch him. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's the case with Ryan Fernandez. I'm not really sure what the numbers or the analytics are telling them, but yeah, it's an interesting move when you look at it, right? I think the other thing that I look at this over this body of work here in these first games of the season is the lack of offense and the lack of really struggling at the plate out of Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker.
Yeah, I was going to get to some of the numbers there and break down the offense a little bit, but since you brought it up, the Gorman's numbers the first week are not that impressive. He goes 5 of 26 with 12 strikeouts. It's almost 50% strikeout rate. And we all know he's got some swing and miss in his game, but you live with the strikeouts if you can get some power. But unfortunately, he didn't get any home runs on the trip either.
The other sign that tells me this team's not seeing the ball well is the lack of walks. Outside of Paul Goldschmidt and Wilson Contreras, everybody else is maybe 1 walk, maybe 2. And that to me tells me a sign of they're not seeing the ball well at the plate if they're not taking walks.
Well, Arenado 6 of 29, Goldschmidt 10 strikeouts. Those are also numbers from the first week that I think concern you a little bit because I know as we broke down the lineup before the first game in Los Angeles, we both came to the conclusion that the 2 guys who have to lead this offense are Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt, and at least for the first week, that hasn't been the case.
Although I will ask you this, which I thought was an interesting fact: when you look at this lineup, you take everybody with more than 15 at bats, right? So that means throw out Herrera, Carpenter, Crawford, and Stiani. So everybody more than 15 at bats. There are 2 players tied with the least strikeouts on this team.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who they are?
Victor Scott. No, he's got 9, right? He's got 9. Oh, he didn't strike out much in spring training.
Number of strikeouts.
Okay. Donovan.
It's interesting. What?
I guess Donovan, but I would not. That was just a guess.
Mason Wynn has 3, which
would
makes sense because he's leading the team in average currently. But the other one is Nolan Arenado.
Okay.
So a player who's not hitting the ball, he's only striking out a lot of times too. So maybe it's just one of those cases of bad luck or happen to hit a couple right at guys, and maybe those breaks will start to fall the right way. But I mean, it's an encouraging sign when I look at it and see that he's not striking out, but it's also not a great sign that he's hitting things right at somebody. Right?
I know the series in Los Angeles. I think he had 3 at bats with a runner in scoring position too, because it just wasn't a real productive series. Donovan was struggling at the first part of those games, and then did get it turned on a little bit toward the end of that series. And then of course the games in San Diego. What do you think of Victor Scott II's first week?
Yeah, it's something to certainly be encouraged by, right? There's a player like him that probably doesn't score on that hit that Goldie made to left field, right? Because it one-hopped the left fielder. And with his speed, him and Mason Wynn are probably the only 2 that can score that, right? And there's something to be said about get him on, get him over, get him in. And a lot of times we forget about that because we live by and die by the home run or the big plays. And there's something to be said about, bunting and moving guys over and just manufacturing runs that this team struggled to do last year.
Yeah, it did seem like they were playing a little more small ball with the bunts and the sacrifice flies and manufacturing those runs. Which I think we all think that there's going to be enough power on this team that you're going to hit your share of home runs. So if they can find some other ways to get runs across the plate, then that's only going to should be a positive for the rest of the season.
And at the end of the day, whether it's a sac fly that's scoring somebody or it's a home run, does it really make a difference?
It's still a run. Yeah.
It's still a run. So we may not, I don't see what the problem is by not living and dying by the home run, right? I mean, I know that was always the Jeff Albert philosophy of try to hit the most home runs that you could. And sometimes that just doesn't work for everybody, right? Instead of just driving the ball and moving the guy over and playing the game that comes to you.
I think Scott's week was interesting because it seemed to me like he played pretty well, but then you look at it and he's sitting like 120 or 130 for the week. And I know he only has the one stolen base. He lost a chance to have a steal on Wednesday because of a walk, but I think that you just thought maybe he would get off to a little bit better start than that. Even though and that's why I say your eyes tell you that he's playing well, but the numbers don't really quite add up there.
And I guess it begs the question too of when Newtbar comes back here soon, do you still keep Scott out there?
I think so, because I think Newport will go to left, and I think Donovan will go back to being his normal second baseman, and Gorman will probably be back to being more, alternate those two guys between second base and the DH spot.
It's certainly your best defensive outfield, and I know a lot of people certainly seem to like Alec Burleson and get behind him, and everybody wants to talk about his spring training numbers. Well, to me, the spring training numbers don't matter, right? You can hit whatever you want out there because they're, as Kyle Gibson has said before, the guys aren't pitching what they would normally throw in a game situation. Right. And Burleson just hasn't gotten it done here, right? I understand Walker hasn't either, so that's probably the need to pinch hit for him today, but it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, well, I think too, like we always talk about, that nothing in baseball to me is more magnified than your statistics after just a few games. I mean, you talk about a small sample size. Most at bats a guy's got is 29 or so at bats through the first 7 games. So we still have plenty of time to get this straightened out. But I think it's just some trends sometimes that you look at and you just kind of wonder if it's going to continue. I think is the concern. And I think Victor Scott the second. If he can get on base, I just hope he has more of an opportunity to run, because it just didn't seem like he really he seemed like he had a couple of opportunities, maybe when he was on second, but there was a left-handed batter up or something, so he really didn't want to take off and try to steal third. So, I'm sure nerves are a little part of it too for some of these guys early in the season. You want to do well to start out the season, and when you're going 0 for 10 or 0 for 12 to start the season, that doesn't look good. So, hopefully get these games under your belt, get home, sleep in your own bed, and get the series against the Marlins started, and they'll kind of get the bats going a little bit.
And I do think there's something to be said about, opening the season in Dodger Stadium with all of the lineup that is, right? You want to say checkbook baseball. I mean, I'm sure Victor Scott's standing out there a little bit thinking like, okay, I'm a little nervous here getting into all of this, right? Because there's a lot of star power in there just in LA in general, right? And so I'm sure as we move through the season, he's going to relax a little bit and progress. And hopefully, 3 games against the Marlins can be the key to help turn that around, right? Because, they're still yet to win a game. So,
yeah, how about that? The Marlins come into the game here on Thursday 0-7. I don't think anybody would have predicted that.
You think Skip's in trouble yet, or is he still okay as the reigning man for the year?
Skip is not in trouble, but I think he's probably troubled by the way that the team has played to this point. We saw the Marlins a lot in Florida in spring training. I thought, I had some questions, but I didn't expect them to start 0-7.
And you look at the numbers, they're playing well. You look at Josh Bell and you look at Jake Berger. I mean, they're going to bring a pretty good team here into St. Louis when they come here.
Yeah, we should. You mentioned Newtbar Gray. Let's get a couple updates on both of those guys, and then we're going to launch into more talk about the opening day on Thursday. But the Grays, we mentioned the simulated game on Wednesday in Springfield because of the fact that they were expecting rain in Indianapolis, and they did get that rain. So he is going to pitch at least once for Memphis now next week. So it's anticipated that he might come back off the injury list to make a start here at the end of this homestand. That's not going to happen. He's going to get that start in Memphis. So you're probably looking at him getting his first start for the Cardinals somewhere on that next road trip, either in Arizona or in Oakland. So I guess it'll be 2, maybe 3 turns through the rotation that he will have missed. And that's, if he can stay healthy for the rest of the year, I think you're okay with that. You'll live with that.
And I think obviously you're comparing him to like Zach Thompson, who's making the start for him, right? And I don't know that it was a bad start today, but I don't know that it was a good start, right? I mean, it was serviceable to get the job done. The team just didn't find a way to get it done behind him. But obviously, if Sonny's only going to miss 2 or 3 games, you'd prefer them to be now and have him healthy for the rest of the season for sure.
And Newtbar played for Memphis at Indianapolis on Tuesday night, played left field, went 5 innings, went 0 for 3, did score a run, and had an RBI as well. The plan was that he was going to DH on Wednesday, be back here. Gray will be back here as well on Thursday for all of the ceremonies. And Newtbar is eligible to come off the injured list on Thursday. I don't think that will happen on Thursday, but it wouldn't surprise me if we see him by Saturday when the homestand continues after the day off on Friday, unless they decide he needs at least 1 or 2 more games with Memphis and he goes back to Indianapolis for those because of the rain out. But I don't think the forecast for the rest of the weekend in Indianapolis is very good either. So it'll be interesting to see what move they make there.
And I understand the love for Alec Burleson to some extent, but I also don't. And so I would much rather see Newbar get those starts here than Burleson. And I think even if he's going to rehab a little bit here, so to speak, I still think that's a much better bet to have him in the lineup.
One person we know will be starting on Thursday is Lance Lynn. He gets the ball for the opening game, the home opener. It'll be his first time, surprisingly, kind of to me, the first time he's pitched in a home opener at Busch Stadium. Actually, it's the first time he's pitched at Busch Stadium since 2017, his last start there with the Cardinals. All of the years that he's spent on the road, he only made intervening years there. He's only made 2 career starts against the Cardinals, and one was in 2018 at Minnesota when he was with the Twins, one in 2021 at Chicago when he was with the White Sox. So he's never taken the mound at Busch as an opponent. You kind of saw the fire in him a little bit in that start in Los Angeles when he got 3 little cheap hits that loaded the bases, and he so let it rip and struck out the side and works 4 scoreless innings and would obviously kept going at least for another inning, maybe 2, if not for the rain delay.
Yeah, when you look back at teams of the past in the Cardinals and you think about who they are, what they are, guys like Arenado and Goldschmidt are guys that aren't going to be outspoken and aren't going to be loud. And Lance Lynn is the complete opposite of that, right? He's going to tell you exactly what he feels and doesn't matter. And, he's out there cussing up a storm and he's getting drenched on in the rain. And I think as fans, we like seeing that, right? It's exciting and it's fun. And I think you have to be encouraged by his start out there, right? I mean, you have to be excited for what he can bring. If he can do that and string those kind of starts together, and we can string some offense together, it should be an exciting day for sure.
I think he and Gibson so far, we kind of glossed over his start. They've so far, through this first turn through the rotation, given the Cardinals exactly what they hope to get out of those 2 guys when they signed them as a free agent.
I really think Gibson is going to be the X factor of this team. He gives up a lot of hits last year in Baltimore, but I think that when you compare the defense behind him here is much better than the defense in Baltimore. And this is a little bit more of a pitcher's park, so you can give up some more hits that don't fall in here, I think, compared to Baltimore. And so if he can give you 20 starts like that, where he's given up a couple solo home runs, but just a few sprinkles of hits here and there, I think you, as a fan, you'd absolutely take that, right?
I think the old adage in baseball is the solo homers don't beat you, right?
That's it.
Yeah, kind of like you try to avoid those cricket numbers, and it's what Thompson did today. Even though he struggled with his control, he managed to only give up the 3 runs, no more than 1 in an inning.
It's the walks that kill people, right? And I mean, you look at what Kyle did in that start, and I don't know, I don't have it right in front of me how many he did. It was 1 or 2, right? I mean, that's where you get killed. Leadoff walks and extra things. When you give people free outs with errors and mistakes like that, mental mistakes is where you really make a difference. And so if you can limit the walks and keep the ball down in the zone, you're going to find success sooner or later.
So the game time is 3:15. As we mentioned, if you're going down to the ballpark, dress warm. The game time temperature predicted to be 48 degrees. If you want any of the information about the pep rallies, the bag policy, the parking situation, all that information is available in the story elsewhere here on stlsportspage.com. And a lot of people we know go down and enjoy the festivities around the ballpark without even ever going inside the stadium. So it'll be crowded. There'll be a lot of people down there despite the chilly temperatures. But hopefully everybody will be in a good mood and it'll be a fun, happy day.
Opening day truly is a national holiday, right? And I know we say this a lot, but like the old adage of it's a tradition like no other, because it truly is, right? In St. Louis, they really look back at the tradition of what Cardinal baseball is with all of the Hall of Famers there and the red jackets and the cars that come out. And you look at what the Cubs did the other day, and they got tiny little fireworks as they're running out of the dugout, and that's it, So like, opening day in St. Louis is truly a special thing.
In my travels around the league and, the years I was doing national reporting as well as covering the Cardinals and they opened on the road, been able to go to a lot of opening days in a lot of different ballparks. And it's not a homer statement to say this because everybody around baseball will tell you this, that nobody does opening day like the Cardinals. There's just no experience like that. And of course, no other team really is able to bring out the Clydesdales or all of the team Hall of Famers that they have here. There'll be several of them around on the home plate for the ceremony on Thursday before the first pitch. And it's just a fun day. Do you have any 1 or 2 opening day memories of all the different openers you've had a chance to go to?
Well, there's a couple for sure. And obviously I look back to when I was a little bit younger, because when you look at the Hall of Famers that come out and you're looking at Stan and Red and Gibby and Lou, and like, those are the guys that made Cardinal baseball, right? And so that's what's so exciting about it, right? I look back on recent years and I think like opening day, the COVID year was kind of weird, right? Because there was nobody there. And we were sitting on the front row of the bleachers, and I remember this because then every game since this, we were on the video with the Clydesdales running around. You could see us there. So that the whole year, while I'm watching the video of the Clydesdales during the eighth inning, I could see myself on the field. So but there's so many memories of opening day.
I was going to say the one I thought you would say is what great parents you had who always made sure that you were out of school in time to be there for the first pitch.
That was always the motivation, right? To go to school so I could get out of school to come for opening day. But as I said earlier, it's a national holiday. Nobody should have to go to school on opening day.
Your teachers seem to understand. We got through that okay. So
yes,
it'll be fun. So it'll be a home stand, nice home stand. The Cardinals play the Marlins for 3, the Arizona Diamondbacks or Phillies come in for 3, and then they go back out on the road to Arizona and Oakland. So it's not as we mentioned, the schedule doesn't really do the Cardinals any favors, but getting off to the 3 and 4 start. Hopefully now with these 6 home games, even though they're against the Marlins and the Phillies, they'll be able to kind of get on a little bit of a roll, a little bit of a streak here.
Yeah, and I wouldn't look past the fact that the Marlins haven't won yet, right? They're a very good team, and they're going to be there. They're going to get it back. They're going to get it clicking, just like the bottom half of this Cardinals lineup is going to get it clicking here at some point too.
We should mention if you're coming down to the ballpark tomorrow early and want to stop by, we're going to be joining Frank Cusimano on his radio broadcast on Fans 590 at 11 o'clock. Billy's on Broadway just south of the stadium there. Frank will be doing his live remote broadcast there, and I'll be there joining him for part of that broadcast. So come on by and say hi and tell us that you enjoy what we do or have any questions, complaints, suggestions. We'd love to talk to the fans and get your input. You can also, of course, just email us at stlsportspage@gmail.com with any comments, suggestions you have about our podcast. And a lot of you made some nice comments about we've seen over the last few weeks since we've been doing this podcast. We really appreciate everybody's feedback, and hopefully everybody's enjoying it.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun for sure. So we'll be there tomorrow to listen to you talk to Frank and drop some insider knowledge on opening day.
I'm not sure we can count on that. We'll see what kind of great questions Frank has to ask. So anyway, everybody enjoy opening day. Hope we got through the first week of the season on the road. We're up and rolling now and get these games in at Busch and the weather cooperates. Hopefully we'll get some more Cardinal news to talk about as well. Of course, all the minor league affiliates get started on Friday as well. So there'll be a lot of news there coming as well. So we'll have all of it covered here for STLSportsPage.com. For Mike Raines, Rob Raines reporting. Have a good day, everybody.